Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Andrea Federle. I'm an elementary school librarian. I wanted to talk to you today about flexible scheduling in the elementary school library. If you were anything like me, in elementary school, once a week you would go into the library. The librarian would have a book selected. She would read it to you as a class, and then once you were done, you were allowed to go and select your materials for the week, check them out, and then the next week you would bring them back and it would start all over again. This is the perfect example of fixed scheduling. Currently, we have a fixed scheduling in our elementary school for the library program. So what is a fixed schedule? Students come to the library on a weekly basis. In our case, it's the part of their specials. So instead of gym or instead of art class, they come to the library. The amount of time for the lesson is preset. In our case, it's usually right around 35 minutes, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. And the teacher is able to use this time for lesson preparation or other types of planning. This is one of the primary reasons that a fixed schedule is used in an elementary school library. There are disadvantages to a fixed schedule. Students can only come to the school library during their scheduled time. So if you have a student that finishes a book early and they want to get more materials, they can't do that because they have to wait all the way until the next week to come in and get more materials. Time spent on a lesson can't be adjusted based on need. If you have a 40-minute lesson, you're forced to break it up into two 20-minute chunks, and then it loses a lot of its applicability and a lot of its meaning for students. The lessons that we teach in the library don't always correlate with the current class curriculum under a fixed scheduling system. Information literacy lessons that are taught in the school library are taught in isolation. They're not taught using some other research or some other project that the students are working on, which makes it much less meaningful for students. Now you might be wondering what this information literacy is. Information literacy is the ability to find, evaluate, and use information effectively to solve a particular problem or to make a decision. So students have to learn research skills. They have to learn how to even phrase a question so that they know what they're looking for. These are all information literacy skills that are taught by the school librarian in the school library. Students today are on an information superhighway, and they are constantly bombarded by information from computers, from television, from video, and they have to know how to use all of this information. And most of the time, they're just confused. So we need to be able to teach them the information literacy skills in a way that's truly, truly meaningful for them. And inquiry learning cannot happen in a vacuum. Information is essential, and access to information is essential. The School Library Media Center is the logical source for information, access to information, and guidance. So perhaps we need to rethink the way we deal with a library. We're not really a library. We're an information center. We're the first place that you want to go to get the information that you need. If a student has a question, the first thing that they should think of is, I can get that information at the library. So let's revisit that information literacy definition. You'll notice that it solves a particular problem, or you make a certain decision. You need it right now. That's called point of need. If you have to wait a week to get the answer to your question, you're not going to remember what your question was anymore. Flexible scheduling gives us the ability to provide open access to the Library Media Center throughout the day. They don't have to wait for a scheduled library time to come in and use the library. Flexible scheduling allows students to check out books whenever they want. They finish the book, they can bring it back in. They can renew materials. They can use however they need to, as often as they need to. Teachers can arrange to use the library, or they can schedule time with the librarian, or both, and they can do it on an as-needed basis. Students can use the library individually. They can use it in small groups, or they can come in as a whole class, whatever their particular inquiry-based project requires. Teachers can schedule library time for multiple days. If they have a lesson planned with the librarian, they can schedule time for 2 days, 3 days, even 4 days in a row, if that's what the student needs. And finally, most importantly, the school librarian and the teachers can collaboratively plan units of study that integrate the core subject areas and information literacy. This makes it much more meaningful for students. Now, they found that school librarians use flexible scheduling to provide individual assistance to students on a much more regular basis. This allows students to get the hands-on learning that they need and the one-on-one instruction from the librarian. They provide electronic support services, manage administrative details of the school library program, and most importantly, plan collaborative lessons with the teachers. This leads to an open and collaborative environment. It's important that the librarians and the teachers work together to ensure that students have the skills that they need to succeed in the 21st century. The benefits of collaboration are multiple. Students, teachers, and school librarians become cooperative partners in their learning process. There's an open dialogue, and students are able to maintain and keep most of the information and most of the learning that occurs. School library programs becomes an extension of the classroom. It's not just another place to go. It becomes part of the everyday learning process. Information skills are taught within the context of the core curriculum. It makes it much more meaningful. And they found that when the library media specialist works with the teachers to teach research skills in conjunction with classroom activities, students are much more likely to retain the skills that they need to access, evaluate, and use information. They're much more likely to keep those information literacy skills and use them on a regular basis, which is exactly what we want. Critical thinkers. So what professional organizations recommend flexible scheduling? The U.S. National Commission on Libraries and Information Science, a federal branch. The Association of School Librarians. And the New York Comprehensive Center, which is a division of the New York State Education Department, all recommend flexible scheduling. So what does the research have to say about flexible scheduling? In 2010, a study was done regarding the circulation of materials in flexible scheduled versus fixed scheduled libraries. What they found was that in fixed scheduled libraries, students checked out an average of 51 books per week. In a flexible schedule, they checked out 41% more books, 71 books per week. The other interesting thing about this is they also studied partially flexible. This is where they joined mixed scheduling and flexible scheduling together. You would think that this would give you the best of both worlds, but what they found is that their students were checking out fewer books than even with the fixed scheduling. This seems counterintuitive, but it seems that flexible scheduling has the most benefits. Students are reading. They also found, importantly, that students that have access to flexible scheduling media centers score higher on standardized tests. Now, to be sure, it's not the fact that it's flexibly scheduled that's creating this. It's the fact that there's a collaborative environment. It's the fact that librarians and teachers are working together to create meaningful lessons for students. So what do we need to do in order to implement the flexible scheduling into the school? We're going to have to consider increasing the hours of operation of the school library, morning hours before school opens, during lunch when students might be available, and after school so that students can come in and use the library, not just to get out books, but to also ask questions and research. We'll have to consider staffing needs. With the school librarian being available to teachers and available to classes, it may be necessary for a full-time clerk to handle the day-to-day operations, the cataloging, the receiving of orders, things on that line. We should consider adding an automated self-checkout. This way students can check their own materials in and out of the library, and it frees the librarian up to do other things. We're also going to have regular evaluation of the process and the success of the program. We have to see if we need to do more to implement the program. We have to see where we might be having some problems and may need to step things up a bit. And this will be a regular part of implementing the flexible schedule. It'll be great to be able to say to students, that was an awesome question. Why don't you go down to the library and find out the answer, then come back to the classroom and share with all of us what you found out. You don't want students to have to wait until the next week. They're totally going to forget everything that they were thinking of, and they're going to lose out on great opportunities to really have some inquiry-based learning. So essentially, flexible scheduling is all about access, making sure students and teachers have access to materials whenever they need it, access to information whenever they need it, and that they can truly become 21st century learners and critical thinkers. But mostly, it's all about the kids. I wanted to thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now. Have a wonderful evening.